When was the last time you were completely alone with your own thoughts? No music, no podcast, no phone within reach, no screen, not falling asleep, not the 90 seconds in the shower before the hot water runs out. Actually alone. Actually still, with nothing between you and whatever is sitting inside your own head. If you're struggling to remember, you're not unusual. You are the norm. In 2014, a team of researchers at the University of Virginia and Harvard published a study in the journal Science that produced one of the most quoted and most quietly disturbing findings of the decade. They asked participants to sit alone in a plain room with nothing to do for between 6 and 15 minutes. No phone, no book, no music, just sitting. They could think about whatever they wanted. That was the entire experiment. Most participants hated it. Many describe the experience as deeply uncomfortable. 67% of men and 25% of women chose to administer mild electric shocks to themselves rather than continue sitting quietly with their own thoughts. Some participants had previously rated those same electric shocks as painful enough that they would pay to avoid them. They chose the pain over the quiet. The lead researcher, Timothy Wilson, described the result as suggesting that the human mind is not built for idleness, that it is built for doing. But that interpretation, which became the headline everywhere the study was reported, missed something important. Because the human mind spent the vast majority of its existence doing something that we now call doing nothing. Ancient humans sat by fires for hours. They lay awake in the dark between sleep cycles and thought. Solitude was not a failure state, it was a mode, a necessary one. What changed was not human nature, what changed was the availability of escape. Psychologist Esther Buchholz spent her career studying what she called the alone time need. Her argument that solitude is not the absence of social experience, but a biological requirement as genuine as the need for connection. She documented that creative insight, emotional regulation, and the processing of complex experience all require periods of real aloneness. Not isolation, not loneliness, solitude, chosen, inhabited, tolerated. The distinction matters more than most people realize. Loneliness is the pain of unwanted isolation. Solitude is the practice of chosen aloneness. They are not the same state, and they do not produce the same outcomes. Research consistently finds that people who can tolerate solitude show higher creativity, stronger emotional regulation, and greater resistance to social pressure. They are better at knowing what they actually think as opposed to what the environment around them has been telling them to think. The problem is that this capacity, like a muscle, atrophies without use, and an entire generation has grown up with constant, frictionless escape from the discomfort of being alone with themselves. The numbers are stark. In 2023, a large-scale survey found that 73% of people aged 18 to 34 reported feeling uncomfortable sitting alone without any device for more than 5 minutes. A separate study found that average daily phone pickups for that same demographic had reached 96 times per day, once every 10 minutes of waking life. Each micro-escape is a micro-interruption. Each micro-interruption interrupts something before it can deepen into anything. What specifically gets interrupted is something neuroscientists call the default mode network, the brain's resting state, which is anything but restful. When you are not focused on an external task, this network activates. It is the system responsible for self-reflection, future planning, empathy, creative connection between unrelated ideas, and the processing of emotional experience. It is, in a very real sense, the part of your brain that figures out who you are. Every time you reach for your phone before the discomfort of solitude settles into something useful, you interrupt that process. The default mode network does not get to complete its work. The self-reflection does not happen. The emotional processing gets deferred again and again. The creative connection between two unrelated ideas, the one that only forms in the silent gap, never arrives. This is not a moral failing. It is a design outcome. Every interface that eliminates friction between you and stimulation is in the business of making solitude feel unbearable, because unbearable solitude is the most reliable path to engagement. Discomfort is not a side effect of the product. Discomfort is the product being solved for, so that solving it keeps happening. What is being lost is harder to measure than screen time. It shows up in studies of creative output, which have been declining in originality across measurable domains since the early 2010s. It shows up in data on emotional dysregulation among young adults. It shows up in the declining ability to hold the position in the face of social pressure, because knowing what you actually think requires time alone to work it out, and that time is no longer happening. The philosopher Blaise Pascal wrote in 1654 that all of humanity's problems stem from the inability to sit quietly in a room alone. He meant it as an observation about restlessness. He had no way to imagine an economy built specifically around making that sitting impossible, and then selling the solution to the discomfort that results from never doing it. But here's the part of the Solitude research that almost never makes it into the headline version of this conversation. The discomfort is not permanent. It has a shape. Researchers who followed up with participants from the electric shock study found that the ones who stayed with the discomfort, who did not escape, reported that the uncomfortable feeling peaked in the first few minutes and then began to fade. Within 8 to 10 minutes, most described something different, a quieter state, a kind of mental settling that felt unfamiliar but not unpleasant. The mind, given no exit, eventually stopped searching for one. The capacity for solitude is not gone. It was never removed. It was buried under 96 phone pickups a day, under the architecture of interfaces that treat a quiet mind as a problem to be fixed, under years of reaching for the escape before the discomfort could teach you anything. You already know how to be alone. Your brain has known for 300,000 years. The question is only whether you will give yourself long enough in the quiet for it to remember.